Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. It's time to wrap up February. Sorry, I'm a little bit late, I know. But February is cut short, so forgive me for pushing it off a little bit. We're wrapping up on the 28th, and basically Ming-Chi Kuo is kind of agreeing with Ross Young, which means that this has a lot of likelihood, and it's going to be a somewhat exciting live stream because essentially we're going to be leaking the next, oh man, 4 generations of iPhone design, thanks to what the display suppliers are comfortable with and what people are up for. Yeah, the island is sinking. You like that, Umberto de Clemente? You like the title? Pretty much that's what it appears the plan is. So we're talking long-term iPhone development here because I think it kind of gives people an idea on what they're waiting for, and I kind of wanted to specialize on that more in today's content because I know that most of you are not upgrading annually, and over time people are holding on to their iPhones longer and longer, and a lot of the reason we talk about the next iPhone or the iPhone after that is because we want to know, should we buy now, should we wait till later, what's to come? No, this is not the iPhone 10 camera, sorry. I didn't feel like plugging it in and setting it up, so I'm just doing it straight off the webcam, and also I like being able to show you the iPhone 10. It's kind of nice to have as a prop on camera and stuff. But yeah, I like the MacBook webcam is still good too. Anyway, when you know what's to come, or at least what's rumored to come, that can influence how you feel about today or what phones you're buying today. Like, do you want this phone that you're buying today to last you 3 years, 4 years, 6 years? You know, all of that kind of stuff influences whether or not you're comfortable with today's decision. So I think that's why, you know, I'm constantly trying to ask, why are people so interested in the next iPhone? What does it have going for it that's so exciting or so interesting? Is it really that we're all just that much of a camera snob? And clearly, there's a ton of people watching these iPhone rumor videos that aren't even buying the new iPhones. They're just interested. And I kind of get that too. I'm interested in what happens, but I don't really plan on buying them either. But essentially, 15 Pros. Don't expect anything different from the 14 Pro's Dynamic Island, except that'll be stretching to the regular, cheaper iPhones as well, 15 and 15 Plus. And iPhone 16 Pro, which is coming out probably September of 2024, that's when Face ID is going to be making its way underneath the display. It rhymes, so it must be true, right? So, the supply chains are capable of doing this now in limited volume. There's already suppliers providing Samsung and others out there, other, you know, smaller Android brands with under-display cameras and that kind of thing. And I guess because the under-display sensors typically perform a little bit worse, that's why they're not going directly with the camera underneath the display. So the 16 Pro and 16 Ultra or Pro Max, whatever they call it. I like Ultra just because it's less syllables. I never liked the terminology Pro Max, which is why I was hoping to just say 16 Pro, 16 Ultra, because that higher end trim is probably always going to have some kind of camera advantage, especially when we're pulling things so like incrementally of like, okay, we need a little bit better lighting, we need a little bit better stabilization. So that's when the camera will still be there. You'll still have a hole, but the dynamic island will have sunk on both sides, and it will still have the animations and stuff. But what I was kind of wondering is, like, is it worth updating the software of dynamic island just for a hole versus a pill? Like, is that different enough to justify updating the UI? Like, could the dynamic island show a little bit more information just by shaving it off? Instead of an oval, now it's just a circle? I don't know. Or maybe it's not that big a deal. Of course, none of this is that big a deal, but maybe it's not down to a hole. Perhaps it's like some of the Face ID sensors make it underneath the display, and of course those transparent displays impact your camera quality a bit, so their thought process, I think, is biometrics, you don't actually look at the result. As long as the biometric is capable of working, as long as it can still scan your face and unlock the phone, then okay, cool. Like, it doesn't matter if the quality of the image or the 3D map data is a little bit skewed by the display. Based on how infrared sensors work, I don't even think it would make that big a difference, but basically there's no cosmetic issues as long as Face ID can work with that transparent display tech. then Apple's got no problem with it. But the reason they're not making the jump to under-display camera in that same generation is because you either get some pixelation on the display when the camera's off, and the display is completely filled up and there's no notch, there's no hole, and you just have that tiny thin bezel all the way around the edges. That can impact the camera quality, as we've seen in Oppo phones and other Androids with under-display cameras. So I think there is a way. It's just taking a little bit more time to make sure that the selfie camera still performs amazingly and stay underneath the screen. Samsung's already proving that. It's just going to take some time because Apple is not their own display manufacturer. They have to outsource all this stuff, and iPhone is built at higher volume than any of these other Android phones that have under-display cameras. So to get the production yields high enough for the iPhone, they basically need to iron out the manufacturing process, and that's going to take a few years. Just like how, Samsung had first dibs on OLED 120 hertz displays, which we were saying wasn't possible for years, but eventually it would be. Now we have that, and it's a pretty common thing. So there's little display specifications like that we know. In time, the production yields will improve, but that means that both the 16 Pro, which will have the sunk island, just a little hole, and the 17 Pro will probably have that too, but by the time we get to the 18 Pro, according to both Ming-Chi Kuo and Ross Young, that's when the display yields are allegedly, again, a lot of things could change in that amount of time, but that's when they think production will be high enough that they could fit the island completely underneath the display. And then the question becomes, can Apple still incorporate the dynamic island software? Like, will they keep that even if there's not a cutout at the top at all? Like, will that make it as immersive? Will that be as, aesthetically pleasing as it is now? Because right now we got to have the big cutout at the top. There's no way around that. We don't have the technology to completely eliminate that. Obviously, we need Face ID. Apple's not going to want to get rid of the selfie camera, period, which is why I think that dynamic island just kind of blends into the background, because you have that cutout, but then it expands to show more information, and then it can shrink when it's done showing that information. But if there was no cutout, period, I don't know, just having this kind of black pill at the top that opens up and expands and then goes away when you're not using it, at first that might seem pretty reasonable, because by then, by the time we're on the 18 Pro, that's so far from now, people aren't going to think that's that big a deal. People are going to be kind of used to having dynamic island, but does it does it stay consistent with iOS at that time for just there to be a black, basically, notification bar that shows up occasionally but then goes away depending on what you're doing? I don't know. Maybe we'll be comfortable with it. Maybe over time Apple will either get rid of it or incorporate it to be more of a notification. I feel like if you don't have a hole or a pill up there to accommodate for, then just having a little drop-down menu as a notification that you can interact with might be less intrusive, might make a bit more sense UI-wise, but yeah, that's essentially what the start of the stream was talking about. Hey, the man about tech, he's in the chat. Dynamic is never afloat to begin with. Well, I mean, I guess you're right. Maybe sinking isn't the right word. But, what do you say for an island that is falling into the ocean? I guess we should say what was the term for it? The Retina Ocean? What was the display? That's what, Promotion Ocean. The Promotion Ocean levels are rising. That's what it is. Islands can't sink, but oceans may rise. And the Promotion Ocean is on the rise, I guess. I pronounced your name correctly. Cool. Glad you could be here, Simon. Yeah, some people like portrait mode, some people don't. When will they engineer out the camera hole? No one will miss it. I think, no one's really gonna miss it, but the better question is the camera hole annoying enough for people to upgrade to get rid of it? My guess is for most people it isn't. My guess is the vast majority of people don't care. But I think that Apple's concern, Apple's wanting to move more towards software services so that they can have more recurring revenue. I think because they see hardware maturing. They see the iPhone getting more and more refined, and there's less and less differences generation over generation, which is why, like, people don't feel the need to get the new iPhone because the new iPhone has some great new feature. But I do think that just naturally the way tech ages over time, after a while, if people have had the same phone for a while, either because the battery health has gotten worse, or they've dropped it a certain number of times, or they're sick of the case, or they're sick of, I don't know, like, just over time, they fill up the storage is another example I've ran into enough. I feel like the average consumer upgrades their iPhone not because the new one is very good. They upgrade their iPhone because their old one doesn't cut it anymore. And I guess that's the dilemma Apple is facing, right? Because these new iPhones that are coming out are very, very future-proof. You know, as an example, here's the first iPhone Apple made with an OLED panel, and there's still no burn-in on it, and it still runs iOS 16. There's some things it doesn't do, of course, that the new ones do, but overall, you can still get by and honestly get a lot of work done and get a lot of life done with a 6-year-old iPhone like this one. And that number is probably going to increase, you know, with the 14 Pro. That's probably going to be up to, you know, it could be 8-9 years of software support, and maybe by 15 Pro, 16 Pro, we're going to be talking like 10 plus years of software support, unless Apple intentionally designs them not to last that long, or who knows, maybe it's a race between the hardware team and the software team, and the job of the software team is to constantly figure out features that new silicon can take advantage of that old silicon can't. That way they can justify discontinuing support. Maybe that's the thought process, but I don't think that I really don't think that customers are that interested in slightly better camera performance as much as just my old phone isn't cutting it anymore, so I need to upgrade. And I think that the iPhone is so insanely popular. You know, Apple was reporting like there's over 1 billion active iPhone users now, and I assume that number is growing because they said their market share is growing. So with iPhone growth at that scale, even if people only upgrade their iPhone every 4 or 5 years, I still think Apple will make enough money and will kind of cycle through this like rotating hexagon or pentagon, if you will, where it's like a bunch of people are upgrading now because they haven't upgraded since the iPhone 8, and they're just like, you know what, my old iPhone's not cutting anymore, I want something better. This is the new 14 Pro, I'll buy that. It's got more storage, it's got a faster chip, it's got a better screen and all that. So they upgrade, and then they're good for another 5 or 6 years. But then we switch again next year. Now people are buying the 15 Pros, and a bunch of them haven't upgraded their iPhone since the iPhone XS. And they're like, yeah, the battery's not that great, and the screen's not that great, that bright. You know, I want an upgrade. So they're not upgrading because inherently there's something the iPhones are offering that they really, really need. I'm talking about the average consumer here, for the record. I'm not talking about the tech community. Tech community is a niche of the global market, and we buy things just because, hey, new color option, right? Like, yeah, like rotating crops, exactly. We rotate throughout the hexagon, and every time, I guess what Apple's worried about is how many sides will this shape get? Does it become an octagon, and now people only upgrade every 8 years? Does it become a dodecagon? You know, how many sides are there, and how long will people go between upgrades will dictate whether or not Apple feels like they have enough market or enough revenue coming in to keep them afloat, which is, I guess, I understand why they're pushing for services more. It's just less exciting to me. You know, I'm not particularly very pumped by Apple finding more ways to take more of our money each month. Ezra is dropping in the chat with controversial takes saying we need to get the ringer switch removed. Wow. I agree with you so much, but I feel like I'll get attacked if I do. I think most people buy a new phone now because the old one is broken, just like washing machines. Yes, Katrina. I'm very much with you there. So as phones get older, they tend to have more issues, whether it's the battery, whether it's the chip, whether people are dropping them a lot and that's dislodging, you know, buttons or what have you. So Apple's like trying to make the iPhone better, but if they make the iPhone better and now it lasts longer, they're also kind of hurting themselves in the long run, right? Jupiter says, I somehow filled up 256 gigs and I don't know how. See, yeah, I know of an exact situation like that where I had a friend with an iPhone 8 and he was just sick that the storage was full, and he kept getting that pop-up. And of course the phone was old too, so he was just like, you know what, I'm done with this, I hate the low storage warning. So he bought a 1 terabyte 14 Pro, which of course that was a lot of money, and I'm sure the trade-in on his iPhone 8 was not very good, but still, he was like, I just want to buy the nicest iPhone I can right now so that I don't have to think about it for years to come. And I think he's right. He probably future-proofed himself. That 14 Pro with a terabyte will probably last him easily 6, 7, 8 years, maybe more, depending on how quickly he fills it up. He's a photographer, and he takes a lot of raw photos and stuff, like professional, not as a hobby on the side like his full-time job is as a photographer. So he uses real cameras and his iPhone in conjunction, but that's why he probably filled up his storage a lot more. Yeah, it was probably like a $50 trade-in. I love it when the trade-in values are so bad that Apple just says, and that's a win for the environment too. You're welcome. So, anyway, I'm upgrading my XS Max only for that USB-C this year, yet my XS Max is still great. Yeah, I think that USB-C is a pretty major shift. I know I keep talking about it in my videos and stuff, like, but I just keep trying to remind everyone, they've only changed the iPhone port once in its history. We've had, 15, probably more, because there's some S's and C's in there. But we've had at least, 2007? So this will be like 16 years of iPhone. And there's only one point in history, in 2012, where they changed the port on the iPhone. The charge port, the data port. And they were very confident in Lightning. 30-pin was just kind of the standard at the time the original iPhone came out. So that's why they went with it, but obviously 30-pin kind of sucked. Even when Lightning didn't exist, I kind of hated 30-pin. So Lightning was good for the time. You know, when Lightning came out, USB-C didn't exist, so I was a big fan of it, and I had a lot of hopes for it. But simultaneously, there's definitely an obvious better port that's been on the table for many, many years now, and honestly, I think Apple should have switched to it a long time ago. But yeah, I think that a lot of people have been asking for it, at least in the tech community. I don't think the average consumer market cares as much about USB-C as we do. But if you're watching this live stream right now, you're in the tech community to me. Like, you're more techie than the average person if you're willing to just watch a guy on a laptop in his office talk. Like, you're already more techie. So you're the kind of market that's more interested in upgrading for features like that. Like, oh, okay, I really want USB-C. I don't even know if a lot of you want it for faster charging or faster data transfer speeds. You just straight up are like, I just want one port for everything. That's how I am. I'm not really in a bunch of situations where I'm like, man, I need to charge my phone quickly. Or I need to transfer a bunch of files off my phone. That doesn't really come up for me. But I love the idea of not having to worry about packing a lightning cable, because I do take a lot of trips, and sometimes they're kind of spontaneous and I need to travel. And having to pack the MagSafe cable for the MacBook, the MagSafe Duo, the USB-C cable for the iPad, and of course the MagSafe Duo needs lightning as well. So you got to just keep track of all these different cables, whereas if my MagSafe... Honestly, what would save me a lot of time is if they just did a USB-C MagSafe Duo, which I know third parties have those, but I've already committed to the first Duo, so it's kind of a sunk cost there. And my wife has a pop socket. She doesn't like wireless charging. So I know when we're traveling, we're going to have to pack a lightning cable anyway. But if one day we can eventually get to the point... Well, honestly, I don't know when this is going to happen. Maybe it's when the SE4 comes out or something, or it could be a couple years from now. But I would love to someday, when it's pretty affordable to do so, probably not like day one of the launch of the 15 Pro, I would love to just switch everything in my ecosystem and just kill Lightning. Get rid of my Magic Mouse. Get rid of the Magic keyboard. Get rid of the AirPods that use Lightning and my iPhones that use Lightning, and just switch everything over to Type-C. At least everything that I use on a daily basis. You know, if I have old items just as collectibles to see how they age, that's one thing. But just all of my daily tech, if that was all switched to Type-C all at once, I think that would make for a fun video. Let's see. I don't want USB-C. My iPhone and AirPods Pro use Lightning. Well, they'll eventually use Type-C. HK, your same logic could have been applied to the 30-pin connector. or the headphone jack. Um, Same intention. I want to gradually kill lightning. I think I want to like do it all at once, though. I think that's my approach. I would either not do it at all and just keep lightning around, because no matter how much I love USB-C, it doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of lightning cables in my life. My wife uses them. I use them for certain things, and I gotta power my Apple Watch chargers and MagSafes with lightning and stuff. So it's gonna be here, and I don't want to generate a bunch of e-waste if I can help it. Which is why I haven't bought like a 2-meter USB-C cable to charge my MacBook, for the record. I would like to have a USB-C cable that's good. But the funny thing is, I appreciate the braided cables Apple makes. Like, I love that the cable that came with my MacBook is braided. But when I'm on a trip and I'm charging my MacBook in weird places or places away from my desk, I'm often like, I got to plug into the wall here, but because it's MagSafe, I can't charge it on the right side. I got to charge it on the left side. So that's like one little thing that I miss about my old MacBook Pro, is it was very easy to charge from either side, and I could just use the included cable. I know that there are 2-meter USB-C cables out there that exist, but making sure that they support the higher wattage and everything. Plus, now I'm just going to have an old MagSafe cable that I don't do anything with, and I feel like I already am drowning in cables and storage boxes and everything, so I'm never in a big rush to buy cables because of how many there are. So I know that if I replace one with another one, I'm going to have another cable to keep track of, and I do think that e-waste is a increasingly growing problem. I personally don't think Apple should include the cable with the phone. As long as they're including Lightning on the iPhone, which they have for the past 10 generations of iPhone, I would just say charge your iPhone the same way you charged your last one, And if you're new, okay, those people have to buy a cable, but that's not a deal breaker. Apple sells a 2-meter USB-C cable, but it's not braided, is my point. So I gotta pay extra and get a worse cable, I guess. And I'm sure it'll last. I'm not worried about it breaking or fraying or anything. But then I'm just gonna have a 2-meter MagSafe braided cable that does nothing. And I gotta recycle it or find someone with a MacBook like mine that may want an extra one or something. I don't know. It's just, it feels so weird having this many cables in my life and then still buying new ones. Let's see. What are we talking about, says Chris Norton? Well, I guess we were talking about how the future generations of iPhone, we were starting with the ProMotion Ocean rising, so the dynamic island pill is shrinking over time. But I don't think it's going to sneak up on us. I think, if anything, this timeline might be too generous, but it sounds very believable based on how, right, like, we had the notch on the iPhone 12, which was basically the same notch as the iPhone 10. Some techies will get technical and tell you it's like 0.2 microns, a little bit smaller. But then you go from iPhone 12 notch to iPhone 13 notch, which is a little bit narrower, and then they kept that on the 13s, and they kept it on the Pros, and they even kept it on the 14 and the 14 Plus, but that's when they introduced Dynamic Island on the 14 Pro, which is rumored to stay on the 15 Pro, but this time it'll make its way down to the cheaper iPhone 15s. And then 16 Pro is when just the Pros will get a hole instead of a pill, so it shrinks a little bit, but it's still an island that changes dynamically. But their report, Ross Young and Quo, is saying the regular iPhone 16s will still have the full-size island, just like a 15 Pro. And then 17 Pro will be the hole instead of the oval across the entire lineup. So both the Pros have the hole and the regular 17s have the hole. But then 18 Pro, specifically the high-end iPhones, will not have anything. The camera will go underneath the display. So it's going to take several years for us to completely eliminate it. But with that iPhone rocking probably a Thunderbolt port, 120 hertz, always on display, all-day battery, periscope lens, great camera, man, Apple's going to be in a very difficult position trying to figure out how to top that and how to make it better. Whether that's folding phones, whether that's I don't know, making it out of titanium. Does that make a big deal? I guess it's just a color battle at that point. But see, I kind of have a very strong feeling about the direction of iPhone design just getting progressively more incremental over the years, which is kind of why I wanted to go back. It was like, okay, most of my audience and most of my channel is built around, talking about smartphones and smartphone upgrades and value of them. Thank you, AJ, for the support. The iPhone is boring in terms of the back design. I don't think the back design needs to be exciting. Like, I don't really care for the whole nothing phone approach. Like, oh, there's lights everywhere. Blah, blah, blah. That gets old really fast. It might wow you for, like, a few days, but after a while, you're like, yeah, whatever. I just want it to be functional. And I don't like the back of the iPhone camera design. I just want them to copy the Pixel camera design so that there won't be a wobble anymore. If I sent you a link, would you rate a promo video I made on stream? Well, thank you, MC Rich. I guess it depends. I don't know. You made a... What is it for? What is the promo video for? How long is it? I need more information. Like, if it's a 10-minute video, I don't think so. Oh, it's for an app you made. Okay. I'm not sure about that. I maybe... How can you send it to me? Like Discord or Twitter or something? Or tag me on Twitter? I might save it for the end. I might go ahead and go for this one, but I may warn people in the future. I trust you, but if I set the precedent that anybody that super chats $5, thank you, by the way, MC Rich, I appreciate that. But if we set the precedent that I will react to anything for $5, then this is just going to turn into a reaction stream. Okay, 34 seconds I can do. I'm not sure when in the stream I will do that. Maybe I'll save it for the end. But I don't want people thinking, okay, react to this. Because I don't want this to just become an ad read for everybody. But sure, I'll check it out. Thank you. Alpha says 10s Max was peak design of any smartphone. Why 10s Max and not 11 Pro Max? I prefer the frosted glass. And, the stovetop camera is not pretty, but the bump was pretty thin on the 11 Pro series. Feel free to send it to me, MC Rich. I'll still check it out. I don't want everybody thinking that this is just going to become a react to this thing. But I appreciate the super chat, though. Thank you. And before I forget, let me address some of the comments we got on the Tailosive Tech Pro post. So Purioski said 5 days ago, sorry for taking so long, do you think Apple will make iOS/iPadOS have a more hybrid skeuomorphic design similar to the way they did it on the Mac? I think that would probably be, I don't know if it's really hard to predict because software is very easily kept internal because there's no suppliers. They don't have to send anything to case manufacturers and stuff. But if you were to update the look of iOS, which a lot of people ask for every year, they're just like, the Safari icon has been the same for all these years. And it's like, you're just bored. It's not that there's something wrong with the OS. You just want it to wow you. You just want it to update its look, which is why I've always suggested from the beginning, or I don't know from the beginning, but for several iOS wish lists now, I think for the past 7 wish lists I've done for iOS, I've always said theme packs would be a great way for Apple to keep iOS consistent for those who don't care about customization. But for the people that do get bored, that are like, hey, I want the Messages app to look different. I want the icon to update. Like, they just want their home screen to look a little bit more lively, which I think gets old very quickly. But if there are people out there annoyed by that, then it would be really nice if they could just find a theme pack they like, and then Apple could even have a theme pack store where they get I'm in favor of Apple, making their money. They want to get into more software as a service, right? Okay, Tim, here's my pitch. You take a 30% fee or 10% fee, if that's more fair, on the theme packs that developers may make for iOS that replaces the most common apps. They can have a obvious theme pack one that covers all the first-party apps like Wallet and Messages and Phone and all that. And they could also have common apps like YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. Those apps they can have custom theme packs for. And if it's a theme pack you really, really like, perhaps they don't update the default. You take the iPhone out of the box and you just set it up. It looks exactly the same for the people that don't like all that change. But there's already people doing Siri shortcuts to redesign their apps and their home screens to make them all custom. So I'm like, Apple's not against people doing that already. Like, they haven't stopped people from customizing them. It just takes so many extra steps, and they're not monetizing it. I'm saying if you want iOS to be more like Android, you can, but if you don't want it to be more like Android, you just don't do anything, and it stays the same. I'm not against options inherently. I just think optimization and streamlining things should be the default, but having an option in settings for those who want to access it, I don't think hurts anything. So that's why I'd be in favor of it. But overall, I think that the biggest like iOS, iPadOS design scheme change we got was the switch to iOS 7 because Johnny Ive took over as full chief of design, no longer just chief of hardware. So all design he took over. And I'm not sure if we'll ever get a shift now that iOS and iPadOS is on more devices than it was back in iOS 6 days. There's so much more widespread adoption now that if they did mess around with it, if they did tweak it, I think that it would confuse a lot of people. And every time you do some kind of subjective design change like that, you risk certain people may like it, but other people may not like it. So you're just kind of randomly ticking off a big portion of the community and policing a different portion of the community, which I just don't think Apple has much interest in, which is probably why they don't tweak it all that much. A theme store exists on every single Chinese phone. Yeah, I know it's very common on Android, but I just think that there's a right way to do it, just like a lot of things that Apple has added that Android already had. I don't deny that. The concept is there, but that's too close. The more you can customize, the more confusing everything gets. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of different settings menus, and it's just a huge mess. I disagree. You could have made that same argument about so many things that iOS added, like the customization of the lock screen, like widgets on the home screen, like Siri shortcuts. All of those things can make the OS more confusing, as you say, but only as much as you want it to be. If you want it to stay simple in the way it is, you can. You know, I'm running iOS 16, but I'm not using any widgets on the home screen. I'm just leaving it the way it is because I just think it looks cleaner, and I couldn't find really any widgets I liked. But that didn't stop Apple from adding things. Same thing with the widgets on the lock screen. Same thing with Control Center. That used to be way less customizable than it is now. There was all kinds of things you couldn't adjust, but now you can through Control Center, and you can decide what toggles are there. Whereas it used to be baked in, just these are the only toggles you have. Dak, just because you don't like something, that's not a good argument that no one should have it. That's like saying I like the silver iPhone, so the black iPhone shouldn't exist. You know, so I guess my thought process is like, this is making the iPhone more you, which is I honestly think what Steve was in favor of. You know, the first iPhone you couldn't even change the wallpaper. So there's all kinds of customization they've added over time. I don't think that customization is inherently bad. It's just there's a right way to implement it and a wrong way. And I think iOS is usually much, much better at implementing it than Android is. But hey, congrats to Michael Burkhart for evolving to M1 after 12 months of support. Thank you. Someone on my block just got an R1S delivered. First time seeing one. Whoa, that's awesome. Man, you should make friends with them. That sounds cool. I don't think Apple did widgets better than Android. I think they made them more aesthetically pleasing than Android, but a bit less functional. Johnny Ive had an obsession with thin and light that compromised the designs. He had a horrible UI taste with the flat UI garbage. See, that's what I'm talking about. Some people like it, some people don't, which is why you shouldn't just mess around with design schemes for the sake of maybe they'll like this one more, because it's like, no, that some people will, but some people won't, and you're not going to win with the design. People will be mad at you if you change it, which will cost money and time, and they'll be mad at you if you don't change it. So there's no like pleasing people with that. Whereas adding features, adding functionality that is intuitive that people can take advantage of, as long as it doesn't complicate the OS too much, which again, I don't see how a theme pack would complicate the OS. You'd have to go out of your way, like go onto the App Store, search up theme packs, and then download them and install them and customize them to your liking for you to then be like, okay, this is too confusing. It's distorted the OS. It's like, okay, just don't do that. You know? It's like, I don't like always on displays, personally. When I had the 14 Pro, I was bothered by it immediately because it felt like the phone was never off. that the screen is still there, it's using up power, and I'm not using it, so I'm like, why does the time need to be on right now? So I turned it off. Now, just because I don't like it, does that mean I think it shouldn't have it? No. I know people that like having the always on display, and I know people out there that appreciate it. Maybe it's because I wear an Apple Watch and I'm used to just being able to check the time like that. But not everyone likes having a smartwatch for whatever reason, and I don't fault them for it. So if someone out there prefers having an always on display, sure, let them have it. I'm very thankful that it's an option and you can turn it off. That's great. There's customization that is well optimized and user friendly is the best form of design, in my opinion. I don't think customization is the enemy. I think that people, especially in the Apple community, from what I see, they blame customization for what is actually just poor user interface. If you overwhelm the user with too many options at setup and when they're just using the phone day to day, yes, it can be a problem. But the problem is not the customization itself, in my head. The problem is how it was implemented. Yeah, Isaiah says he likes always on display. I'm for you having it. I've got nothing against someone wanting it. Same way, like, I don't need a midnight green or purple iPhone, but I know people that do. So, great, have a color for them. Options are a good thing. And if they can be implemented well, that's best. So, yeah, I don't think that Apple needs to spend that much time on just updating the UI to be a more hybrid skeuomorphic design like they did on the Mac. I mean, I wouldn't be against it if you're asking me personally what I like. I'm pretty adjustable. If there's a new version of something, I'll just try to update as soon as I can. Be like, okay, that's the future. The day one I saw USB-C on the 12-inch MacBook, I was all on board. I was like, wait a minute, there's one port that can do everything? Like power, audio, data, and it's that small. And yeah, I was all on board with it from day one, even though I'd never seen it before. I wasn't like, oh, but I want HDMI ports. I was like, this is going to take a while to adjust the industry over to Type-C, but I think it'll be worth it because it's a much better port. So similarly, if this year Apple says we're going to have a more hybrid skeuomorphic design across iPadOS and iOS again, I'd be like, cool. I'll embrace it. It probably looks nice. I don't doubt that. Marngel says, which do you think Apple is more likely to release in the next 5 years? A foldable iPhone or an AR VR headset? That's a tough one. I thought about this a lot, actually. I saw before I went live, Margel make that comment. And I was like, this isn't a question that I think deserves a video, but it's a very good live stream question because we can kind of debate about it in the chat. If we're purely just going off of rumors and what the leaks are pointing to, allegedly, it's hard to believe, but there's a lot of people claiming Apple's going to release a mixed reality headset later this year. I know. They've been saying that for the past 4 years, so I have a very, very hard time. Katrina just says neither. The answer is no, Margel. Which is more likely? No. But that's a cop-out answer. That's kind of what I want to say. Like my gut reaction is Apple won't do either. But that's not what Marngel is asking. He's not asking which will come out first. He phrased it a very specific way. He said, which do you think is more likely to release? So this could be this is a 5% chance of happening, and this is a 1% chance of happening, right? Which is like either one has a 95+% likelihood of not happening at all, which I think I agree with a lot of you guys on that. But, I mean, it's getting harder and harder to discredit all of these mixed reality headset reports, especially when they get more and more precise. I am more and more convinced that there is a headset Apple is working on, but I am not convinced that it is for us, that it's something that they would sell to everyday people. It sounds a lot to me like a developer tool that just internal software engineers would use, knowing how much Apple has spent on internal moonshot projects that don't go anywhere. So we're just talking likelihoods here. We're not talking what is likely to happen. I think that the leaks and the rumors, and according to what we're hearing from somewhat reputable sources, I'm not quoting super unreliable people here when we're talking about the mixed reality headset. Mark Gurman has gotten a lot of things right in the past year. Not everything, but a lot. Clearly, he has legitimate sources based on the information he's been able to report accurately. Same thing from Quo. Thank you, Caleb, for your 1 month of support. Always on display is the best. No, but I respect your opinion. it's not the best thing. I would say love. It just in general, just if you find love in life, that's probably the best. But always on display is a decent runner-up. I agree. Um, I know. I'll refresh a bit. Joshua, it would have been easier for you to just ask the question in the chat. That kind of defeats the point of pre-asking the question on the post. I'm tempted to change the rules on this a bit so that, like, I'll say if the comments aren't posted on that post before I go live, then I'm just not going to read them. Yeah, Katrina says, I have no doubt you will find both of them in the R&D lab, but I don't think any of them will make it to production. Yeah, I mean, if it was an internal developer tool, I guess you could kind of count that as in production, but I'm leaning towards the headset being more likely just because I have not seen the market outside of the Samsung fan base, which has some, very loyal fans. I'm close to saying fanboys, but there's just Samsung enthusiasts that like Galaxy and they like the folding phones. And I know people out there that are a big fan of the flipping devices and the folding devices, but after reviewing them myself and using them and kind of knowing Apple the way I do based on the tech they've made over the past 10, 15 years I've been using them, it doesn't seem like a device I think Apple is that interested in. And there has been some talk about making a foldable iPhone, but it's gone very quiet over the past year. Nothing has been very concrete. Definitely doesn't feel as close or as legitimate as the mixed reality headset leaks, both of which I don't have a lot of faith in, but I guess I'm leaning more towards the headset just because I don't think folding phones really solve that many problems. I don't think the issue is that they're too expensive or they're too fragile, which is what most people who buy folding phones think it is. Well, right now you don't like it because of the crease and, it's kind of pricey, but over time it'll get cheaper. And I'm like, nah, the folding tech really only gets cheaper when there's a ton of demand for it. And there's some demand for it, but they're clearly very durable. Like, watch Snazzy Labs throw his Z Flip around, but like they can take a beating. I don't think durability is the issue. The issue is just that the feature itself is not that useful. Like, I just don't think it saves that much space in your pocket, and unfolded, it doesn't unlock that much more screen space. And I found myself getting annoyed when I reviewed the Z Flip because every time I took it out of my pocket, I had to unfold it, or I had to decide, is this something I could do with it closed, or am I using my phone right now in a way that would be justified opening the screen? So every time you pull the phone out of your pocket, you have to make that decision. That's another option that is being forced in front of you. That's a poor implementation of it. And I know a ton of people that would probably, like, just from what I've seen in reviews and stuff, people that keep their folding phones folded up in their pocket when they go out and about, and they only unfold it when they're at home. And it's like, well, if you're only going to unfold it when you're at home, why not just have an iPad at home and have a normal phone in your pocket when you're on the go? And that's going to be cheaper, by the way, and you'll get a much better tablet and a much better phone that way. So I just don't think that the feature of folding in itself is going to be prioritized, and I think the market will exist for it, but it's not going to be the new normal, similar to how Samsung had the Galaxy Note series with the S Pen. A lot of people love that S Pen. I know a ton of people in our Discord as well that are just like, I need that pen. I just love having a stylus built into the phone. But does that mean that Apple and OnePlus and Google with the Pixel and everybody needs to have a option with a phone that has a pen built in? Not really. I mean, Samsung found a market for it, but I don't think the market was much bigger than what Samsung made. So similarly, I know Apple has way better market researchers than we do, and I think if there was a huge market for folding iPhones, they probably would have released one by now, because folding phones are no longer like a new thing. They've been around since 2019. We've had 4 years of folding phones now, so I don't think we can say this is the new latest and greatest. No, the folding phones very quickly ran into the exact same problem we have with regular phones. We're just in the refinement era. All the folding phones are just a little bit brighter display, a little bit better camera, a little bit faster chip, a little bit longer battery. That's same thing our phones are doing, so I don't want to hear Samsung say, we innovate. There's innovation. Well, you innovated like 4 years ago, but you can't call the Z Fold 4 a massive innovation over the Z Fold 3 when You have to be a smartphone expert to be able to spot the differences between the two. Um, not to say I wouldn't be interested if Apple released one. I don't think I would use it or buy it, but I would love to review it. I think that for the channel and to make the tech community more interesting, it would be really, really cool if they released a folding iPhone that was like iPad mini unfolded and 14 Ultra 15 Ultra when closed. Uh, I want that product to exist because I'm sure some people would buy it. It would probably be the best folding phone. It would probably sell better than any other folding phone because it's Apple, and Apple is able to justify people spending big bucks on phones more than any other company. They dominate the luxury smartphone space, um, but I don't think it's big enough for them to consider it, and they'll probably just say this isn't up to Los Pollos standards, you know. Would I take iPhone with USB-C or portless iPhone? Obviously, USB-C. If you're going to have a port, might as well make it USB-C. I don't know what portless enables. Portless just maybe a little bit longer battery life, but that's not a big deal to me. I use an iPhone 10 at 84% battery health. I don't care that much about my battery life. Even if a folding phone was the same price as a flat one, I would buy the flat one. And I think that's what most people would say, Katrina. And I don't know if they could ever even get to that point. Just objectively, there will always be more complexities with a folding phone. I don't think you'll get ever to a point where a folding phone is cheaper than a flat phone of equivalent spec, right? Obviously, you could spec up a 1 terabyte 14 Pro Max and say, see, this costs more than the Z Flip. But I'm talking about like equal camera, equal software. If you just had, here's the flat phone, here's the folding phone, same software, same everything, same price, I still think more people would grab the flat phone. I don't think it will be 15 Ultra. I think it'll be iPhone Ultra with iPhone 15 models. That would be interesting and confusing at the same time, but I guess that wouldn't be a terrible idea, Isaiah, because at least they would be transitioning more towards a lineup where they don't rely on numbers, because I feel like they can't keep this numbers thing going forever, right? Are we really going to be saying iPhone 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24? When does Apple decide to change the naming scheme, and how does the naming scheme work will be kind of interesting. But yeah, I guess I'd lean more towards the headset, but neither sounds very likely. Joshua says, I do like Galaxies, but the Apple ecosystem makes owning one again as a main phone impossible. I think foldables are dumb, but the always-on display was 4 years overdue with 14 Pro. I think Apple just held the standard of what always-on display needs to be somewhat high. They didn't want to do it unless they could get the display down to 1 hertz, which took a while, but they finally got it with LTPO. Yeah, they could have technically done it on older phones, but it just would have ate into the battery life a lot more and definitely been more prone to damaging the OLED panels, which is maybe a good thing. Maybe if they offered always on display on the iPhone 10, I would have burn-in right now. So that's one of those situations where it might be better off just not having it if it causes damage long term. Let's see. Regression to folding phone is the future, though. I don't think so. You say average people don't care about Type-C, but a random person behind me at Target looking for a lightning cable was like, why aren't they just all the same? And I think she mentioned it being the same on both sides. No, yeah, I don't think that many people average consumers will upgrade purely for Type-C, but, you know, I shouldn't overgeneralize it, right? I probably have a bad habit of doing that. It's not like we have a dedicated group of techies and then a dedicated group of average consumers. There's a spectrum of people in between that might care a little bit more. But yeah, if people started finding out that the new iPhone meant that they could just use one cable and either end of the cable could be plugged in, what the average consumer at Target was talking about was they wanted the cables for their phone to be bilateral, which means it doesn't matter which end plugs into the other end. That's something Lightning does not have and has never had, unfortunately. And I would definitely be more comfortable with keeping Lightning if they would have adjusted it to support bilateral charging, but it doesn't. So basically, all of your Lightning cables are going to have Lightning on one end and something else on the other end, whether that's USB-A, USB-C. That's probably it. It's got to be one of those two. Whereas USB-C wouldn't even matter which end you plug in. You don't have to be like, does this side go in or does this side go in? To me, that's like the next step after reversible. 30-pin was not reversible, but Apple was comfortable switching to Lightning because they knew it was reversible, so that would make the port plugging in experience better. This one-ups that. Reversible and bilateral, that's peak. That's great. That's, in my opinion, the best port. That's what we should be using across everything. And Lightning just didn't do that. So that's why I don't get why people are like, but I have Lightning already. It's like, okay, so you think we should stay on 30-pin because that's what people had back then? When they added Lightning to the iPhone 5, it wasn't on anything. Actually, switching to Type-C is going to be way easier than switching to Lightning because Type-C has been around. Most people have Type-C cables already for something, whether it's a hard drive, a GoPro, iPad, a MacBook. USB-C cables are around, but Lightning cables were non-existent when they introduced the iPhone 5. So the average person would care about USB Type-C because they don't have to figure out what cord goes with the white. I do think it's a spectrum, so they're probably, you're right, I agree, that there will be a decent chunk of people that appreciate that the iPhone is switching to Type-C. But my point was, like, they wouldn't upgrade purely for that. I think they will like that once they get the iPhone, but the average consumer, again, it's a spectrum. Some of them are aware of what's going on in the tech world, some of them aren't. But they're not the kind of person that's watching the iPhone event, right? Like, they don't even know that a new phone came out unless they get an ad on it on their phone. But I know a lot of people that just have no idea. Like, I ran into that just a couple weeks ago. I was at it was a family gathering, and there were some friends there, and they were just like, "Wait, I'm on an iPhone." I think they were on an 11 or something, and they were like, "What did they go up to now? What generation are they on?" I was like, 14. They were like, "You're a nerd. You know what generation." Like, they don't even know what the latest and greatest is. They don't pay attention to that stuff. You know, when we're talking about iPhone design being like, or iPhone volume being at the realm, Apple saying over 1 billion people are using it. There's no way just 1 billion people are all aware of the latest iPhone and all of its features. So even if the rumors are right, and the entire iPhone 15 lineup switches to Type-C, there's probably going to be hundreds of millions of iPhone users that have no idea that iPhone exists for many, many months, maybe years, potentially. Excuse me. Which is why, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, yes, an average consumer will appreciate it, but I was talking earlier about how I don't think that many average consumers will upgrade purely for Type-C. There will be some. Again, it's a bit of a spectrum. There's some average consumers that maybe don't watch tech videos, but they do occasionally get an ad for Apple, and if Apple boasts about the Type-C connector, you know, a lot of them don't even know the name. That's the thing. They just think iPhone charger. They don't even know Lightning versus USB-C. They just think that's an iPhone and that's an Android. And they're like, wait a minute, the iPhone uses an Android charger now? Wait, what? Like, they're not connected to the news like that. I cannot emphasize enough to so many of you how little people care. We're very interested in this stuff, but there's so many people out there that just do not give a crap what the new iPhone port is. And when they eventually have to switch because their old phone's not working anymore, sure, they'll have to figure out, oh, wait, my old cord doesn't work. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, I got to use this one now. And then they get over it, you know, just like the charge brick in the iPhone 12. It was a little annoying for some, but we got over it in a matter of a couple days. Now all the Android phones are doing the exact same thing. Connor, thank you for 5 months of support. Would iPhones ever have a curved screen? I don't think... Probably not the way you're thinking. You know, there's talk that they want to do similar to what they have on the Apple Watch Series 7, you know, where the display kind of flies over the sides. And the display itself is not actually curved here, but it's an optical illusion they have with the glass. It's like this curving glass that kind of magnifies the pixels underneath it so that you can actually see the pixels from like a perpendicular angle. Even if you're not looking straight at the Apple Watch, you can still see the display. And Shrimp Apple Pro was talking about how the iPhone 15 Ultra and whatever is going to do a similar thing. So I don't think they'll ever go to like what Galaxy S7 did, where the display is physically, you know, engineered inside the phone to fall over the sides. For one, that creates repairability problems. And when I reviewed the Galaxy S8, which had the display that curved over the edges, it resulted in a lot of accidental triggers, and it also kind of distorts the image when you're watching a video. You can see the video feed actually warping along the edges, which is not great. So I don't think we'll ever get to that point again. Samsung has been slowly moving away from having the curved edges because people didn't seem to like them all that much. I didn't mind them. Like, I didn't think it was a deal breaker, but I just think it was probably causing a lot of trouble in production that wasn't worth it. I got no problem with this design. I've come to really appreciate the rounded chassis of my iPhone X, so I've just kind of decided I would like that to stay, at least on the back. You know, if you want to have a flat front and a rounded back, that's probably a good compromise, and maybe Apple's working towards that slowly. But, yeah, I don't think there's that much of a need or point to getting the display to just wrap around the edges. But I could be wrong. Maybe they'll find a use case for it where it's kind of helpful, or, I don't know, you show your battery status on the side or something. But it's just, I don't think that's what people need or care about. One final Samsung feature I'd love to see as an option for iPhone is the Edge display. Really? I thought Samsung got rid of that. Didn't they move away from all that? Lightning has mail in the cable. Type-C has mail in the phone port, so if Type-C breaks, phone should go for repair. Maybe, but I still have all kinds of issues with Lightning connectors. I'm not saying USB-C is indestructible, but I'm saying Lightning is not flawless either. Like, I am using consistently a perfectly new, I think this came with my 13 Pro Max, and I never used it until recently, but there's nothing wrong with this cable, right? It's just an average Lightning cable, and it's USB-C on the other end. And when I plug it into my iPhone X, because I use it as a webcam sometimes, if I plug it in one way, the cable doesn't go in like perfectly. Like, it's a little bit asymmetrical at the bottom, and I noticed that my webcam, it'll charge the phone is charging, but it won't transmit data properly. It won't show up in the Webcam Plus app. But if I flip the Lightning cable around the other way, then it works with the Webcam Plus app. So when you have a big open exposed port like this and you're dropping it in your pocket all the time, I still think it's likely to pick up lint and debris or dust or sand or whatever gets stuck in there, and then you got to clean it out. And I feel like that's probably less likely to happen when you put the female port on the cable itself, because you're not carrying around the cable in your pocket and that's not picking up lint. Maybe you're throwing it in a suitcase. But again, there's problems with both, but I have a giant tub full of old cables that I've accumulated over years and years of reviewing tech and getting cables with each one. And I've had at least 4 or 5 Lightning cables die on me, where the pins on the outside rub off, and now it won't work. I've checked it on my phone, on my wife's phone, on the iPad, and the cable's useless now. Or it'll only work one way, so it's no longer reversible. And it's not the wiring. It's not this. I don't have any cables that split here. I know some people are like, that doesn't have to do with the port. No, all of them are from these exposed pins rubbing off over time. And I feel like that would be less likely on USB-C. Again, I know that there are some issues that you can have with Type-C too, but I just don't think that the difference in durability is substantial enough that it's worth keeping Lightning. They both got problems, but I don't think it's common enough that it's like, oh no, like Android phones have been on Type-C for years, and the Android phones got a lot of problems, but that's not a common one, at least from what I understand. I have not seen a bunch of people on Android complaining about their USB-C ports breaking over time. And if it's so bad, why is Apple switching to it on the iPad? You know, I feel like you can't be half your foot in the water, half your foot outside. Like, if USB-C was just so inherently bad that it couldn't be durable and the solder connections are broken or whatever, then you shouldn't be switching to it on Macs. You shouldn't be switching to it on the iPad, but you've done that already. You switched it on the Siri remote too. So commit. Just go all the way. Don't go through this halvesy thing. Like, okay, let's take the disadvantages of USB-C so that we can appreciate the advantages, rather than have the disadvantages of Type-C and the disadvantages of Lightning all simultaneously so that we have to have multiple cables for everything. Let's see. Micro USB was the worst. I still don't hate micro USB as much as USB-A, because at least micro USB was not symmetrical. I think that's my biggest annoyance with USB-A is they made the port symmetrical but not reversible. That was a huge misstep, which is why basically so many people plug in a USB-A cable and they're like, wait, what? That's not the right way. And then they got to try it the other way. Oh, no, wait, I had it right the first time. Like the collective man hours we've wasted trying to plug in cables simply because of how poorly USB-A was designed. And the other reason I'm so angry about it is how widespread it became. It was a terrible port design, and yet they put it on everything, and we're still living with it. We still can't get rid of it on so many machines. So many people are just like, no, we still need USB-A because I don't want to have to buy an adapter. That's going to be hard. I'm going to buy a $500 camera, $400 printer, but don't make me buy a $12 adapter. There's just such a market feet drag when it comes to USB-A. I was like, can we kill this off, please? Like, as soon as possible? And everyone's like, yeah, I don't want to. Oh, God. People just want to hold on to something clearly inferior. That sucks. Didn't they introduce the TV in October and AirPods in September? Yes. They specifically introduced Type-C on the Siri remote after the EU law was passed. I don't know if that was coincidence or planned, but I do think that's probably the indication of where Apple's headed. I don't know why they would switch the Siri remote to Type-C if they weren't planning on switching other things. Put it in wrong and you screw up the port because it's so fragile. No port will be... Yeah, but micro USB wasn't symmetrical. There was only one way to plug it in. You could look at it and know how you're supposed to plug it in. That's why I don't fault it as much as USB-A. I'm not saying micro USB is good. I'm just saying there was one way to plug it in, which if you're going to have an asymmetrical port, that's the way to do it. That's why I don't fault HDMI as a port or display ports. They're kind of annoying because they're not Type-C, but at least by looking at them, oh yeah, have the cut corners edges of HDMI have to go on the bottom, so you know exactly how to plug it in. Even without looking at it, I can take an HDMI cable and I know exactly what orientation it needs to be to plug into my MacBook. Whereas USB-A, you got to look for the little holes and where that line is on the inside of the... Ugh, stupid. They will switch everything to Type-C because they legally have to. In the EU, they do. In the US, they don't legally have to. I think they will switch, but I just want to remind people that it's not confirmed. It's not a lock-in thing. There's a lot of rumors and a lot of leaks all pointing to it happening, but don't use the word confirmed because a lot of people have thought things were confirmed that weren't in the past. And Apple could pull a fast one on us and say Type-C for the EU, but not for the US. I don't... That would annoy me. Let's see. I've never had any lightning cable issues for years. I'm happy for you, my favorite tech, but I've got statistical evidence to back up my claims. That's the difference. Anecdotal evidence is one thing. So that's me saying I've had lightning cable issues and you saying I haven't. Okay, we're at a stalemate. My experience doesn't reflect your experience. But I ran a poll on YouTube that got over 10,000 votes saying which cable and port design have you had fail on you more regularly? And it was not even close. Lightning was at like 80% and USB-C was at 20%. So for every one person that has a story in their life of USB-C fails on me more than Lightning, there's 5 people saying Lightning has failed on me more than USB-C. So I don't think we can... there's Jupiter saying Lightning is failing me right now. When your iPhone 10 dies, will you switch to a 10S? I don't think the 10S is that different. I mean, I would get a lot more software features, but my current plan is that if my iPhone 10 dies, also secondhand market, I haven't seen a huge price difference to iPhones that old. The couple things I'm kind of missing about having a newer iPhone is I do miss the frosted glass. I don't like how fingerprinty the glossy back is, and I like the centered Apple logo. I think that looks a lot better. And I kind of miss having occasionally, not very often, but occasionally it's nice to have night mode and the ultra-wide lens. So I feel like, okay, I can keep this form factor because I love the 5.8 inches. That's what I can't get on the iPhone 12, 13, and 14. or the 15 probably. I love this form factor. I love the rounded chassis that fits in my hand a lot better. So a good compromise would be the 11 Pro. And I've been able to find some iPhone 11 Pros on eBay and Amazon right now for somewhere between 300 and 400 bucks. And I also wish I had the silver iPhone, so if I was buying a new one, I'd probably get a silver 11 Pro. But the iPhone 10 is still working great. There's still not really anything wrong with it, so I'm going to just keep using it. Maybe until it dies. I don't really know what my plan is, but I'm enjoying it so far. And the 11 Pro should have better battery life, better camera, and the frosted glass, which I appreciate, and still maintain the same form factor. And of course, the A13 chip, which will get a lot more iOS updates and features that this iPhone doesn't get. So that's my current plan. And then if the 11 Pro stops getting support and that dies, I don't know. I'm not thinking out that far, but maybe at that point 13 minis will be super cheap and I could try the 13 mini again. Or I never had a 13 mini, actually. It would be cool to try one, though, because then I would get MagSafe back and all that. Whereas if I can get, like, ideally, if I can wait long enough, it would be cool if Apple made a iPhone 16 or 17 mini that had Type-C and Dynamic Island and a great camera and all that. I'm not convinced that I need to buy the Pros or the Ultras in the future. Like, I appreciate 120 hertz, but I'm trying to live without it, and I'm trying to battle smartphone addiction. So my goal is not to have the best possible phone anymore. I'm intentionally, because that's what this stream kind of started us talking about, was the phone is slowly going to blur into just no hole at the top and just thin bezel all the way around, amazing camera, amazing battery life. Okay, now what? I'm intentionally trying to lean on more of the nostalgia. What can you get at a discount? What can you get for cheaper? And that involves a lot of me being more nostalgic, reviewing older tech. Like this phone you can buy for like $200 now on eBay. And by the time the 15's out, and maybe by the time my iPhone 10 dies, you'll be able to buy the 11 Pro for $200 or less. Who knows? And then when that dies, maybe you'll be able to buy a mini iPhone for $200 or less. Or I just want to emphasize more on what you can get with a low budget, because I think there's enough YouTube channels all talking about the latest and greatest. There's 80 YouTube channels that are all going to post the exact same thing on the exact same day. Here's the unboxing. Here's the stuff. Yeah, there is a crazy windstorm going on right now, so I was wondering if that was popping up. I use third-party C cables now because I had constant issues with corrosion with Apple's C cables so bad I had to get my M1 service late last year to get the ports repaired. I'm sorry to hear that. Again, it is still anecdotal, but that does suck. That's annoying, but I'm not convinced that you wouldn't have had that if it was lightning or something. James says, bad polling sample. Your viewers are all iPhone users, so a way higher percentage use Lightning regularly than the general public. I disagree. Because my audience is mostly Apple, that means that they're more likely to have recent generation iPads and Macs, which all Macs basically from 2016 and onward have been very much pushing USB-C. So have iPads from the past 4 years. So that's a very good sample size because it means you're using a lot of people that are buying USB-C cables and iPhones. And sure, I'm not saying my poll is flawless. There's probably some data skewed with it, but that's the data we got. So it's very easy to discredit existing data, but it's a lot, I think, more factual, and you have a lot better argument if you have data versus someone who doesn't. If you don't have any data to back up your claim, okay, that's not going to hold up, in my opinion, in an online forum or in court or whatever the situation is. Someone with data, even if it's skewed, is more valuable than no data at all. At least if we're not talking about like a guilty versus innocent verdict, but if we're talking about market research and that kind of thing. If you had proof that there was a substantial number of Android users that were experiencing massive durability issues with USB-C, okay, show me the data. Show me your claims to back that up. Are there a bunch of Android users hoping that their phones switch away from USB-C in favor of a more durable connector? I haven't heard about it. I haven't seen anyone talking about it. Usually when I'm talking to Android people, USB-C is one of their favorite points that they love to bring up that the iPhone doesn't have. So what if you haven't had trouble with either Lightning or USB-C? Well, then great. You'll only get benefits because objectively USB-C, if you're ignoring durability, there's only good things to come from USB-C. In my opinion, even factoring in durability, I don't think there's much statistical evidence that Lightning is more durable. There's anecdotal evidence, which is not as valuable, in my opinion. Let's see. I also means this audience is a bunch of tech-savvy enthusiasts, which means they probably like USB-C or depend on it for almost anything else. True, but if that's the case, doesn't it make sense for Apple to prioritize it? Even if the tech community is more interested in USB-C than the average person. I mean, the tech community is more interested in OLED. The tech community is more interested in ProMotion. The tech community is more interested in periscope lenses and shooting in ProRAW and having 48 megapixel sensors. Apple caters to that, so might as well cater to it a little bit more, because the average consumer is not really going to care at the end of the day. I think they'll maybe get a little annoyed with it, but I have not seen concrete evidence other than just some people saying, yeah, my lightning cable's okay. That's not a very good argument. Again, that's all you guys can really bring up. If there's studies, tag me on Twitter if there's statistics to back this up. But Waveman Mike is, again, you're just doing anecdotal evidence. I can do that too. It's a stalemate. You've had problems, I have not. Okay, who's right? It doesn't go anywhere. That doesn't really accomplish anything. Why would anyone want Dynamic Island on a device that doesn't need it? There's no reason for it on iPads and Macs except to ruin the screen. Well, the flaw with that argument is, what is need? The iPhone doesn't need Dynamic Island, so why do you want it on there? I think the argument people have for it on the Mac is that some people like the look of it, and they like the idea of cleaning up the UI so that the status bar updates depending on what you're doing. It's a personal preference when it comes to design, but I think that Dynamic Island on the MacBook would not look better. I think it would look kind of weird to have, as you're switching between apps, this big bar going back and forth and back and forth. OLED for iPhones is much better than mini LED for screen size, usage periods, and static icons. Yeah, in regards to dynamic range and I think peak brightness, OLED is still better, but it's more prone to burn in, which is why they haven't switched to it on the MacBooks yet. Joshua says, who's right? Yes, the answer isn't an individual's experience, it's the majority of statistics. Right, so that's why I'm like, I have statistics. You may not think that the statistics were perfectly polled, but I don't think you'll ever get perfectly polled statistics. So show me your skewed statistics, and do they, let's meet in the middle. If you have statistics that say USB-C is worse for 60% of people and Lightning is worse for 40% of people, okay, if we compare the difference between my data and your data, USB-C still lasts better in that case. Dozen devices. I have USB-C ports on like a dozen devices. I've never had any durability. Well, good. I'm in the same way, Mike. It just seems like the EU is moving us this way. All the leaks and rumors are pushing this way. I think USB-C has far more overhead and far more capability. Personally, I think, yeah, Halami, we will need a supercut. It just keeps coming up. It's wild how slow Lightning is. However, have you tried transferring a raw video file on my 14 Pro Max? It's slow compared to any Type-C device I've used. Oh, absolutely. I had to restore my iPhone 10 from a local backup. I didn't want to do the iCloud thing. So I just backed up my iPhone 13 Pro Max with a Lightning cable to my MacBook, and then I was factory resetting the iPhone 10 when I got it, and I restored the new copy. It took hours. I want to say it was like 3 or 4 hours to move all of the data on the iPhone 10. It would have taken minutes if this had a USB 3 Type-C port or Thunderbolt. It would have taken definitely less than an hour. Would have taken so much less time, but all of the Lightning ports, even on the 14 Pro Max with a terabyte of storage that they charge $1,600 for, still a USB 2.0 port, which is like, bruh, come on. If you're gonna, I would side a little bit more with you Lightning fanboys that are like, no, Lightning's better, I just like the way it looks. I would side with you a little bit if Apple was trying there with Lightning, because you can make Lightning faster. That's not a debate. Like there's no way around it. they made Lightning 3.0 back in 2017, which was almost 6 years ago now. 6 years ago, when they introduced the first iPad Pro that had ProMotion, the 2017 one, 10.5 inches. They introduced a new standard for Lightning that supported the faster USB 3 speed. And then they got rid of that. They never brought it to the iPhone because obviously the next generation iPad switched to Type-C because Type-C is better, right? So they switched to Type-C, which of course maintained the faster USB 3 speeds. And then in the M1 iPad days, they upped it to Thunderbolt and everything. The iPad port kept getting better and faster, but Lightning, even though they physically made and mass-produced and shipped a faster connector with the same shape, same port, it was backwards compatible and everything, they never brought that to the iPhone. Like, that's ridiculous to me. Like, they're not even trying to defend it. Like, they're just lazy. It's just purely lazy. Yeah, Lightning on the iPhone, even on the 14 Pro Max, which costs $1,600, is still USB 2.0. I've lost count how many Lightning ports I've had to clean Lin out of for friends and family. After their iPhones wouldn't charge anymore, doing the same will be almost impossible with USB-C. I feel like it's just a more clogged port, so there's more stuff in there, so I feel like there's less likelihood of things falling in there, but it just... Use MagSafe most of the time, people. It's not that hard. And Type-C will be there for the pros that want it, and I feel like most of the Lightning fanboys were more in favor of portless anyway. Just pretend your iPhone is portless. You don't have to actually use the port. Shocker, right? Finder backups are the main reason why I want the iPhones to have faster transfer speeds, which is why it annoys me that regular iPhone 15 is rumored to still have USB 2. I get it, but I feel like if you're the type of person to do the Finder backups and that kind of thing, you're probably going to buy the 15 Pro anyway. You're more likely to opt for the Pro. From a 10R, would you say a base 13 Pro Max is a good upgrade? I'm looking at the upgrade in the UK contract. Sure, I don't know what your financial situation is, but yeah, I would say so. Yeah, if you want to go portless, just don't use a port. It's that simple. Just pretend it's not there. Imagination. You know what? I hated the headphone jack. I didn't want to keep using it. I preferred wireless headphones. I'm the weirdo out there, but it's not the same thing with charging in my head. If there was a way to charge my iPhone across the air and I could be like 20 feet away from my phone and it would still gain a charge, I would be more okay with portless. I'd be like, yeah, why do we need ports anymore? What's the big deal? But we don't have that. All of our wireless charging is still limited to, hey, what's this? You got to have a wire on the other end in order for it to charge properly. So it's inductive charging. It's not really wireless charging. But with headphones, I can be 15, 20 feet away and still have not lossless, but very clear, very good sounding audio just over the air. And it's not that expensive. You can find these things on Amazon for like $100 or less, and there's knockoffs that sound great that are $20, $30. You can get really cheap wireless headphones. I was like, I don't want to have to fumble around every time. I did it all growing up. I had iPods, and I was using them on my iPhone 5 too. I have to unravel these headphones every time they come out of my pocket, or I gotta wind them up when I'm done and make sure I place them the proper way in my pocket so they don't get tangled. Now my phone is rubbing up against these plastic earpods all the time. I don't want to fuss with all that. I prefer wireless, but I still used an iPhone with a headphone jack. I just pretended it wasn't there. I just didn't use it. It was there, but it almost never got plugged into. Even when I got my iPhone 6, I basically already had been using Bluetooth headphones. Apple didn't make any at the time, so I wasn't using AirPods yet. But when AirPods came out, I ordered them immediately. Yeah, chuck some silicone in there. Bang, portless. We've seen all these challenges online, right, where people open up their iPhones and they put USB-C on them, or they'll put... One guy did USB-C and Lightning on the same phone, and they add them back. It should be way, way easier to make a phone that's just nothing. I erased the port on my phone. Wow. Congratulations. Wonderful. Yeah, I use MagSafe exclusively, so it won't be an issue for me personally, but will be a future issue for average people. I think it's an issue now, and like ports breaking over time is an issue with Lightning, and it's going to be an issue with Type-C. I'm not saying it's going anywhere. I'm just saying it's not substantially worse because we have evidence of mass production of, iOS market share is growing, but Android is still bigger. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. There's more people on Earth using USB-C phones than Lightning phones, and it's not being reported as a major issue. Does it happen sometimes? Sure, but Lightning isn't innocent either. One of the main reasons I wanted to keep the headphone jack was the similar argument you're making now. You can still use Bluetooth if you don't want to use the headphone jack. Better to have both. I know, I know you guys wanted it, but I just think that the use case, like, you can still do wired. You can still plug in either USB-C to headphone jack adapter and do wired if you need to, and you can still do lossless playback, I believe, through Lightning if you have the right headphones for it. AirPods Max can't do it because they put Lightning port on the AirPods themselves, but the Lightning port on the iPhone can output a lossless signal. So you had to go through the adapter route, which is a bit annoying, and I apologize, but I understand why they didn't prioritize it, because I believe the market for that is incredibly niche. Whereas I think the market for people that want faster charging or faster data transfer speeds is not that niche. Number of people looking for lossless playback off of their phone. I'm not saying there's zero market for it, but it is a lot smaller than the market of people that want either faster charging or more efficient charging. Charging's a lot more common of a thing than music playback. Pretty much everybody with an iPhone has to charge it. Not everyone with an iPhone listens to music off it. It was a single-use port versus the port. Removing the port as a whole is not as easily as like, okay, we'll just use an adapter via MagSafe. No, it's not that simple. And it's a very old port for one. Easier to work around because you still have the USB-C port to connect adapters. Right. You wouldn't have a lot of your defense against removing the headphone jack if you went portless. That's true. A lot of that argument would fall apart. I'd rather keep Lightning for 10 more years if it meant the headphone jack came back. Ooh. Wow. I usually disagree with... I usually agree with everything eUpload says, but I could not disagree more with that statement. How does MagSafe affect battery degradation? In my experience, I haven't noticed a huge difference in wireless charging via battery health. I don't think it makes that big an impact. There is a lot more heat generated with inductive charging, but the heat is from the outside in. It's not so much the battery getting hot. The battery's charging pretty slowly, but the charge pad itself, you'll notice that if you set AirPods a little bit off on a MagSafe or something, you'll feel them get really, really hot. It's just the process of that coil emitting a charge makes the outside of the phone pretty hot. But if you're fast charging the battery is getting hot, which is dissipating the heat to the outside. So I don't think wireless charging, I mean, there's a little bit of excess heat, but it's not impacting the battery as much as it's impacting the outside of the phone. That's true, Margel. The headphone jack is a single-use port unless it's the iPod Shuffle, which should get Design of the Year because the iPod Shuffle literally charged through the headphone jack, which is kind of amazing. Not just powered it, but charged it. Like, it gained battery percentage through the headphone jack. Let's see. After listening to the last podcast, I'm so glad I sold my Damage 14 in space gray and replaced it with a silver one. Wait, why? What did that have to do with the podcast? Average consumer couldn't care less for lossless audio. They can't even tell the difference. It all sounds the same to them. True, but yeah, I agree with that. But of course, I think the point Craig is trying to make is that average consumer will give a crap about wired charging versus exclusive wireless charging. That's a lot more likely to tick off people. Whereas getting rid of lossless playback and just telling people to either use the Lightning to headphone jack adapter or use Lightning headphones, which were included at the time, that's not a big deal. Although Lightning headphones were kind of stupid because you couldn't use them on anything other than the phone. And I guess the iPads, but yeah. MC Rich, thank you for the super chat. From the dev side, I feel like there are more possibilities with the dynamic island than we are being provided APIs for, e.g., app notification view. Yeah, oh, totally. I agree with you. I feel like everything should be up there. I love the dynamic island when it's doing something, but a lot of the time it's not. A lot of the time it's just sitting there, and it's just kind of cutting into your content doing nothing. So I appreciate the super chat, by the way. I don't know if you sent me or tagged me anywhere with your reaction thing, or you wanted me to react to something. We'll get it. We're getting near the end of the stream here, but I'm willing to react to the promo if you'd like. Again, this is a one-time example. It's kind of the first time someone's asked me to, so I'll do it for MC Rich, but I don't plan on doing it if people keep asking about it. What's good about a headphone jack is it's cheaper wired. What? Not really anymore. I don't think that argument holds up. I mean, maybe when it first went away, you'd have a point that wireless headphones were more expensive, but now on Amazon, it's like wireless headphones for $20, and honestly, they sound okay. They're not terrible. Maybe they don't have the best noise cancellation or anything, but like my parents have bought wireless headphones that they tell me they love that are these cheap AirPod knockoffs that are very affordable, and they're happy with them. I'm not going to try to convince them they need better sound quality. If they're happy and they got it with a cheaper product, that's to their advantage. So there's super cheap wireless headphones now, and okay, maybe I found wired headphones for $5 instead of $20. Okay, well, in that case, I don't think you're buying new phones. If you're splitting hairs at $10 versus $20, then I don't think you're buying a phone without a headphone jack. You're probably using an iPhone 6 still. In which case, the adapter for the headphone is more than the headphones itself. Oh, in the podcast, I said I regretted getting the Space Gray MacBook. That's right. Yes. Okay. I remember. Thank you for the reminder, Sorgek. I wouldn't mind the removal of the headphone jack on the iPhone 7 if it adopted USB-C that year. You'd replace a universal port to a newer universal port in that scenario. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Marngel. Basically, I don't think you could have switched to USB-C too soon. As soon as USB-C existed, I was in favor of it. Okay, put it on everything. At first, I wasn't sure if you could put it on a phone because I only saw it on the 12-inch MacBook. But once I saw them start switching Android phones over to it, I was like, oh yeah, no, come on. If Apple's doing it on some of their products, they should do it on all their products. We don't need two reversible port standards. Let's see. I'm replacing my stolen SE Silver White with a second-gen SE Black with product red. Ooh, nice choice. Years ago, I was using wired headphones and the tip of the connector snapped off and got stuck in the headphone jack. Oof. Yikes. Yeah, that's no good. I had tons of issues with my headphone jack. How many memes did you guys see about the guys that had to turn the headphone jack right to get it to start playing, or you have to hold the cable in the right position for the audio to play out? I had that so many times. More cables, more problems, which is why I primarily charge wirelessly. I only use a cable when I need to. I do still have to plug in a cable to my iPhone 10 if I want to use it as a camera, which I do on occasion for these live streams or for a video or something. But if it weren't for that, no, I would be wireless. Other than that, overnight, I charge it on MagSafe, and in the car, I charge it via Qi. It's actually amazing how big the growth of wired EAMs have been. I don't know about this. Critical would be a good starting point for someone that's just curious about the phenomena, especially in age of huge growth. I have no idea what you're referring to. I think the Nexus 6P from Google was the first phone with USB-C. Was it really? I liked the Nexus 6P. I remember reviewing it on this channel way back in the day. What if Apple sold applesauce? I would love it, Robert. It would probably be very expensive, but I like applesauce. I'm kind of craving it right now. How many years we've been talking about USB-C? I think 5. I mean, it's existed since 2015, and we've talked about it since then. There's a lot more in the Mac field we've been debating, is this too soon? Should Apple keep the legacy ports and all that? But I think you're probably referring to just the iPhone, but I want to remind you that for many, many years, no one was saying USB-C was coming to the iPhone, even though it existed. Everyone was saying that Apple's just going to go straight to portless. And I believe them. You know, when they first introduced the iPhone 10 and AirPower and everything, they were like, wireless is the future. Apple's probably going to switch everything to wireless eventually. And there were some startup companies and rumors talking about charging being done over the air. So I thought, similar to Bluetooth and how it wasn't great at first and over time it got better and better, I thought, oh, okay, we're in the early days of wireless charging. So right now you need to put your phone on a charge pad, so that's why there's still a port. But once Apple figures out a way to charge your phone over the air, then they'll be okay removing the port, but that just never happened. The technology ended up being way more hypothetical than we realized. The startup companies were all scams that were lying about the performance of their over-the-air chargers, and it just didn't work. So once that reality started setting in, I was like, ugh, yeah, okay. I mean, I would be okay with portless, but I do think it would tick off a ton of people. And once so many years went by, now it's 2020, 2021, I was like, okay, you know what? If we're still rocking a port now, and I don't think wireless charging is going to change fundamentally that much, it's still going to be inefficient. You're still going to need cable to plug into that charger, and the phone still has to be touching something. Why don't we switch the port? If the port's sticking around, we should have the best port possible, which is Type-C. And I was saying for years in my videos that I think that would be the best solution. I think that would be the best outcome, is for it to switch to Type-C, but no leaks, no rumors were saying that. Everyone was saying Apple's going portless. They're not going to make the switch away from Lightning. Portless is coming next generation. I mean, at first they said iPhone 13 will go portless, then they said iPhone 14 will go portless. Then the rumors started changing more recently, partly because of the EU laws, but also I think Apple probably realized that wireless charging didn't advance the way they had hoped. Sahil says, I'm in a market for a new iPhone and sold on iPhone 13 because of your videos. My question is, should I wait for the SE4? Just buy the 13? SE4 could be a very long wait. That's like over a year, and we don't even really know what it's going to cost. So iPhone 13's been out for a while. You can probably find it on sale somewhere and get it for a discount. I don't think that's a bad idea. I guess it just depends on how urgently you need a phone. You can always wait for something better around the corner, but if you're willing to wait 2 years, you'll have better choices than if you wait 1 year or if you buy today. So I don't know what your current situation is, but I would say if you really need to upgrade now, then sure, iPhone 13 is not a bad idea. Let's see. First USB-C phones were from a Chinese brand, LETV. Huh. I have never heard of them. Probably surprised Apple that the EU came at them with the mandate for USB-C. Despite them, Apple could give everyone else wireless charging iPhones and keep USB Type-C on the EU to bite back. They could, but it's kind of a losing battle because there's other countries that are already passing similar legislation. Like India is going to pass a similar law, just like the EU. Brazil is also making motions of passing similar laws. So you could fight it, but I don't know why. It would make you look really weak. It would make you look really... Because there's all kinds of advantages of switching to Type-C. You can... It's very marketable. Going portless is not very marketable. You can't, like, boast about a phone being portless. Hey, you can't use your old stuff anymore. Oh, cool. Okay, I guess I should buy that one. You know, but if you say, this new port allows us to charge faster and transmit data faster, and it works with more accessories and stuff, that's a selling point. I think a lot of people would, like we've seen in the chat, there's a lot of people that specifically would upgrade if the iPhone had Type-C. I even see a lot of comments saying, I wasn't planning on upgrading, but if it does get Type-C, I will. So I think there's all kinds of great advantages to switching to it, whereas just adding it for the EU and not for the US, it doesn't really make much sense to me. I don't see how they would... That would complicate the manufacturing line, and they would have to continue to introduce the USB-C iPhone more and more in different places as the legislation passed. And I just think it's better. It results in the least amount of e-waste to get rid of Lightning, which is pretty dated. So, yeah, I don't have it's not impossible that they could do that. I just don't think it makes sense to. Unpopular opinion, smartphones are barely phones anymore, and there barely been any call quality improvements in the last 15 years. I feel like, Zumu, the people who say that are people that don't pay attention very much, because FaceTime audio came out like, it feels like 9 or 10 years ago now, but basically FaceTime audio let you do a voice call over the internet rather than through like cell towers. Um, well, I mean, cellular, you can do that anyway. But I mean, FaceTime audio just sounds so much more clear. You get a much more rich bit rate than you do over just a standard phone call, which is using, I forget what the technology is called. SMS. It's not SMS, is it? There's a different voice protocol when you're going from iPhone to Android making a phone call versus, even if they're on Android, if you just audio call them through WhatsApp or through Messenger, it sounds way better. Um, and I understand personally why there's not a big emphasis on call quality, because people aren't calling all that much. Most people are texting. Getting a phone call these days is kind of like, whoa, what's wrong? What's going on? Like either people are doing video calls, which is a pretty big difference, but I don't know how much more clear you can get a real time. It's a live stream, right? I love how I was asking for the standard and I got 3 different answers in the chat. No, you're thinking of GSM. No, you're thinking of VoIP. No, you're thinking of VoLTE. It's like, oh, right. It's one of those probably. But yeah, there's definitely been audio quality improvements. I just don't know how it can sound much better. It's a live stream going back and forth, and you have to kind of make sure that it's filtered. Otherwise, the speaker on one end can cause feedback on the other person's end because they got a microphone and a speaker going on. So there's always going to be a bit of filtering going on. I don't know how many people were hoping for like lossless phone calls. It's just going to chew through your battery life faster. But FaceTime audio sounds so much better than GSM VoIP or VoLTE, whatever it is. But yeah, they're not really used as phones very much. The definition of what a phone is, I think, has pretty much changed. Taking a phone call and putting the phone up to your ear is something people don't do much. Yeah, I agree. And I get why. It's kind of intrusive. FaceTime audio is an example of VoIP. Okay. Yeah, I just know that it can be done without cell signal. You can do it over Wi-Fi. Let's see. Before you end the live stream, tell us one feature you really want on the iPhone. We already know about USB Type-C, though. Well, I don't have a lot of new ones. If I could think of something that would convince me to upgrade, I would tell you. But genuinely, I have a hard time. The closest thing I could think of, again, which I don't feel super confident about, there's no leaks or rumors pointing to this idea, but hypothetically, right? We're talking hypothetically, iPhone Ultra is getting bigger, getting thicker, giant camera bump, giant battery. We know the base series of M chip can work without a fan, right? We know they can fit an M2 chip in an 11-inch iPad Pro. So maybe if we get on the 3nm architecture with some improved energy efficiency and better performance, and we're, of course, like you said, Thunderbolt's on the phone, maybe if they came up with a way for your iPhone to become a Mac. A lot of the time I'm using my iPhone as a webcam anyway. So I'm not saying, boom, put an M3 chip in an iPhone and I'll buy it. No, it's got to be done right. Like, it depends on how good the performance is and all that. But if they made an iPhone that had a chip in it that was as fast or close to the same speed as my M1 Max chip, and then you mount that to your monitor with your MagSafe attachment and all that. I like everyone saying, don't say it. Oh God, don't. I was like, everyone gets mad when I say this, but I said the exact same thing about the iPad and you all thought I was crazy. Years ago, I did a video saying, will they bring the M series of chips to the iPad? And everyone was like, no. Drew, you're stupid. M stands for Mac. They would not put an M chip in an iPad. iPad can just get the A14X or the A12X, and the M series can be for MacBooks. But they did it. And not even that, they went further than you guys thought. Then there was rumors saying, oh, they're actually going to put the M1 chip in the iPad Air. And everyone was like, what? No way. That's stupid. That's crazy. Why would they put that in a $600 iPad? That's ridiculous. The M series is just for pros. It's overkill. You don't need an M chip in there. Okay, well, I'm going to keep pushing a little bit and say maybe if you made a huge gargantuan iPhone with a ginormous battery, maybe you could fit the bin, okay, not the high end, at least the binned version of the M3 chip or whatever. You could fit that in an iPhone at a lower clock speed, yeah. And it's got a Thunderbolt port, so I mount it on my monitor. Now my iPhone is and you plug it in via Thunderbolt to the monitor, and basically your iPhone becomes like a Mac Nano. It's like a super, super tiny Mac. And it's outputting Mac OS on whatever screen you plug it into. It's your webcam, it's your microphone, it's your processor, it's your GPU. And of course, the monitor, if it's a studio display or whatever, has additional ports. So that increases the I/O. So if you want to plug in more accessories to your iPhone, now the monitor is also a dock that's adding ports. The monitor also has your speakers built into it. So yeah, it's an Apple version of Samsung DeX, which I've been talking about for years. It's not a new thing. But again, when people ask me, like, other than USB-C, what's something you really want on a new iPhone? I struggle to come up with things. That's why I'm using an iPhone 10 right now, is because I don't think there's that much stuff that they could actually change. The way I fundamentally use my iPhone is just a pocketable computer that takes pictures, and I can do some light banking on it. I can check email. I can text people. Thank you for the donation, MC Rich. I'll check it out in a second. And as far as covering what a phone does for me today, I think they got it. I think they've covered it. I'm sure every year it'll have a little bit better battery life. It'll get a little bit better camera. It'll get faster charging. I'm sure it'll get all those things. But I just don't see a need to upgrade just for slightly better cameras, slightly better battery, slightly brighter display. Like, I just use my phone for so much basic tasks that I can't justify it. So if you're asking me, Drew, what would justify you dropping big money on a new iPhone, it's like, you got to change the way I fundamentally use it. You have to come up with a way for me to unlock some use case that I currently don't have. I'm not saying it has to be the iPhone is now a Mac thing. I'm just saying that's the only one I can think about. That, like, maybe there's some other use case Apple has in their pipeline that I haven't thought of yet. Maybe they come up with some feature for the iPhone that I'm like, oh, I want to use it for that all the time, but I didn't realize it could do that. So I guess that's why I don't have a good answer, but that's also why I could justify downgrading, because I went back. Thank you, Simply Sora, for 8 months of support. I can downgrade like 5 generations of iPhone, and I don't really feel like I'm missing out on all that much. There's a handful of things, but I'm also gaining a couple things. I'm gaining the portability, the more comfortable design. I'm gaining 3D touch. So there's a lot of things I like about the older phone, and the new things that the 13 Pro Max had going for it were awesome, and I loved them, but they didn't fundamentally change the way I use my phone. It was just kind of refinement upon refinement upon refinement. So as much as I love USB-C on the new iPhone, I'm not going to buy one just for that, because, again, I use wireless for everything. In Marquez's most recent video, he seems to have doubled down that there won't be USB-C on the iPhone. I don't think he has sources, but I don't know why he wants to double down on it. But, yeah, Apple version of Samsung DeX, essentially. And thank you for sending me... Let me pull it up here. It's a short little promo that MC Rich made. Freelancing. Here's my new promo video. What is... That's not a YouTube link. Hold on, give me a second. With a better shop. Is this... I was going to say, is this an ad? But I think that answers the own question. Of course it is. It's like, I thought an ad was playing. But it is an ad. Utter Riddle websites. A new design. Modern and sleek. Okay. With a better shop. Easy, simple to use. All right. Yeah. Better looking blog. You've got the dynamic island animation going there. Better than ever. Previous riddle. Well, cool. Download 2.0. Yeah, it seems pretty good. I don't got any immediate criticism for you, or if anything constructive, I would say RW stands for Riddle Wednesday. I gotcha. I would probably say, like, maybe a little faster might be better. I don't know if 30 seconds was kind of the target you had in mind, but if it was kind of moving a little, if you watch like Apple commercials where they're unveiling iOS, maybe that gives you good inspiration. I like the animations and stuff though, but it just felt, yeah, maybe make it more fast paced. If you're looking for advice, if you just want me to react to it, then yeah, I mean, seems fine, seems good. Let's see. Drew has explained how the language in the EU law makes it pretty unlikely Apple could get away with portless. Like, the phrasing of the bill, yeah, I don't think they can. But even if I'm wrong on the way the bill is phrased, which is that if the device is large enough to accommodate a port, it has to have Type-C. I think it doesn't really alleviate the problem. The problem is the European Union wants USB-C on the iPhone, right? If Apple finds a loophole, does that change the fact that the European Union wants USB-C on the iPhone? No. It just means that they're going to rephrase the law and come after them again and again. India's going after them. Brazil's going after them for it. So it's not a battle I think Apple can win via loopholes. One way or another, they're going to phrase the law. Either it's already phrased in a way that they can't get away with it, or it will be adjusted until. It's not like, I don't get why people think if Apple found some loophole, like, okay, we put USB-C MagSafe adapters in every box. Now it's portless. Haha, we did it. You just think the EU is going to be like, oh, shucks, you got us. Dang it. Like, oh, darn it, we didn't know they would do that. Oh, well, I guess you won this time, Apple. It's like, no, this is a government agency that wants less e-waste, and they want the port on the phone, not through some adapter or something. They want it on the phone. They're going to change the law until it goes into effect. So Apple would be putting in a lot of time and a lot of work just to delay the problem further. So, yeah, I like MKBHD, but I think he's going to be proven wrong. iPhone is going to have to use USB-C, at least in Europe. Yeah, and I think other countries as well, which is why it would just make more sense to streamline it. He said something like, I'm sure that somewhere at Apple headquarters there's an iPhone with Type-C that doesn't believe it's ever coming to market. I might speculate a little bit on this one. I could be totally off, for the record. Marquez, let me be clear from the beginning so you guys don't take this message the wrong way. Marquez is, in my opinion, the best tech YouTuber, period. I think he's so well-spoken. He's incredibly talented at simplifying topics and making them more digestible, and I think that's why he's so popular. He's incredibly talented with cinematography, his B-roll. He's just so perfect for the tech YouTube space, and I'm so grateful we have someone like him. However, Marquez has a very close relationship with Apple. He gets review units early. He's interviewed Craig. He's more than once, I believe. He's talked with like chief of staff at Apple. And clearly Apple is aware of him and they watch his videos and stuff. And I, without saying too much, can attest that Apple doesn't like content creators talking too much. A little bit's okay. You know, if you're big enough with like 10 million plus subscribers, you can still talk about iPhone leaks and you can still talk about rumors and leaks and that kind of thing. And Apple will still send you stuff. But they still take note of that. If you're on Timmy's nice list and you start talking about leaks and you start talking about how this iPhone's going to be better and the next iPhone's going to have this and that, Apple PR is not going to like that as much because that hurts present day sales. It's just objectively not good for the iPhone 14 Pro sales if we go around telling everyone that it's going to switch to Type-C in a couple months. So because he's on good terms with Apple and he knows that Apple's basically the biggest player in the tech community, you know, that drives the most amount of clicks, and he wants to remain on good terms with Apple, again, Not saying there's anything wrong with what he's doing, but it's his channel. He can run it how he wants, but he may intentionally try to lean against rumors and leaks so that Apple gives him the all clear, like, is this guy hurting present day sales? And I got that impression a lot watching Marquez in the past few years, is that he hasn't put as big an emphasis on leaks and rumors as much as he used to. And I think it's because he's become so successful and he's so huge that he wants to maintain good relations with existing brands and current companies, because he straight up talks and has contacts and knows these people that make these products. So he doesn't want to get on Apple's bad side, which, considering his business model, I don't blame him. I think that makes sense. So by intentionally leaning towards, no, I don't think the iPhone will ever have USB-C, the PR people watching his videos are like, good, keep saying that, like, again, I could be way off on that one. Maybe there's no ulterior motive at all, and that's just exactly what he believes, and that's fine. But all I'm saying is there's a lot of reason as to why he wouldn't give in to any leaks or rumors like that. I get why he wouldn't. Makes sense to me. Make a video of you going to the Apple Store with a 2G and ask an employee if you should upgrade. I don't really. I've seen videos like that. I just don't think they're very interesting. It feels like those prank channels. That just annoys me. It's like you're just wasting everybody's time. He's not the only one that's like, there's a lot like that. Not a big deal. Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I'm just saying it's a factor that might go into what a content creator says is their existing contracts and relationships with brands. I don't really have any contracts or that many relationships with existing brands. I'm kind of forming a pretty strong relationship with Aptera, but I think it's because they're a startup and they're kind of early. Yeah, I've just had the pleasure of talking with their CEO and their chief of design, and had really great conversations with the people that work there and collabed with them many times. So that's kind of the first tech company that I've actually been able to communicate one-on-one with, and they answer my questions and stuff, which was fun. Like Mike said, I already go to the Apple Store with my HomePod Mini and waste my time and theirs, right? I just don't see the point in just like, let's film their reaction, like they're working, and there's people that are trying to get help at the Apple Store. I don't need to clog them up. You've been banned from YouTube for talking about the iPhone 15 too early. 1MLD, thank you for the super chat. He says, I totally agree with what you said about MQBHD. Well, thank you. I mean, I could be way off there. It's total speculation on my part. I may not be accurate on that. But, okay, Joshua, a while ago, dropped a comment on this post. He said, I'd like to address the latest change to Find My that it far worsened the usefulness. I'm a victim of a bug in watchOS that causes it to not properly work with activation lock, and as a result, my SE first trend was stolen 2 days ago and reset, and it immediately got removed from my iCloud account and is not tractable. Ooh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry to hear that, Josh. Causes it not properly work with activation lock. Yikes. I hope you let Apple know about it. Sadly, there's nothing really I can do about it, but that sucks. Yeah, I would be super ticked off if that happened to me. How does your watch get stolen? Did they take it right off your wrist, or did you leave it somewhere? Like, I guess I have a hard time following that, but yeah, that's terrible. If it's someone you're close to, potentially, that maybe they've seen you typed in the code, in which I think that's all you really need to reset it. I'm not sure. I think you might need to sign it out of iCloud, but you're saying they got past all that. That's terrible. Let's see. That's why the biggest YouTubers can get away with more. They're too big to screw it, but you still can sour the relationship to agree. Oh, yeah. But I'm okay with that, because I think that when you're a bigger channel like his, you're counting on business relationships. Like Marquez is able to get the views and get as big as he is, and with the production value he has, businesses want to work with him. And I think showing off their product in the best possible way, and having good B-roll and having great cinematography and great angles and great intros and outros and stuff. For one, I think Marquez just enjoys that, like listening to his podcast and seeing the way he talks about it. I think he personally just takes pleasure in doing that. But on top of it, the main reason you want to do that is that so you can showcase products from companies that want to work with you. So like what he's interested in, which is toying around with all kinds of lenses and angles and sensors and you know, making videos simple and high quality, which is great. And again, I think he's the best tech YouTuber, period. For his business sense, having a good relationship is a good thing, because for the best overall performance of the channel, you want to have good quality videos and exclusives. You know, you get products early, you get stuff before it comes out, and you get to document it. So of course, the big tech companies are going to want to continue to send their products early to people that are going to make them look good, which Marquez does, and he enjoys that. So it's a good relationship for him to make sure that the businesses he works with are happy, and he's happy with the way he's running his channel. I think it makes sense for him to kind of take that into effect, and that's fine for him. But I am not trying to be a carbon cut copy of MKBHD's channel, and I don't believe YouTube just boils down to who has the highest quality camera, who has the coolest angles. That's a part of it, that's a factor, and that's I think a big reason why Marquez is so successful, but it's not the sole reason. My channel is not trying to emulate that business sense. I'm not going for, I want to have the best B-roll, I want to have the best cinematography or anything. I'm going for just, for one, I love speculation. That's what a lot of my videos are here's what the rumors are saying, here's what makes sense, here's what doesn't, here's what I think will happen. No one's saying this, but here's what I think could happen. That's just the way my brain works. I've accepted that over the past almost 6 years now. Wow. Almost 6 years of being a full-time content creator, just doing this as my job. I can't do what Marquez does. He is so talented. He is so good at taking these big, complex tech subjects and just breaking them down into their core fundamentals, and then explaining that in a simple and clean way. And I've tried to do that. I've really attempted it many times, and I just can't do it. There's so many times. The channel members can attest, the people that have supported me. Thank you, MLD, for the super chat. Again, the channel members can attest. There's so many times where I'm filming a video, and I'm like, I want to try to keep this under 10 minutes. I want to try to keep it simple. It's not that big a subject. It's not that big a point. So let me try to keep it short and concise. And then I hit record, and I'm spewing out my thoughts and opinions as quickly as I can. And I tried scripting too in the old days, and even after all of that practice, and even after scripting it and trying to keep it short and concise, the video still ends up being 15, 18, 20 minutes. And I'll be like, oh God, those 20 minutes just flew by. Seriously, time freezes when I get on a topic that I'm really passionate about. And I think Marquez is, if I were describing his content in his videos, it's like a funnel, which is very helpful and functional. I'm not trying to provide that as a negative in any way. It's a benefit. That's why he's so successful, and I think that's why Marquez will always and forever have more followers than I will. Marquez is a funnel that takes all of the complexity and all of the news in the tech space and boils it down into something that's manageable, that people can understand. Whereas Tailosive is more of a magnifying glass that is looking into intricate details, tiny news, tiny leaks, tiny rumors, extrapolating on them, and trying to imply, speculate, and infer on what a lot of the future has in store. Whereas I think Marquez is more focused on the funnel, which is, here's what already exists, and the magnifying glass, explode approach is just like, let's see what's yet to come, and let's dive deep into these leaks. So yeah, that's why both on Tailosive EV and on Tailosive Tech, sometimes there's news that can be summarized in a couple words. SE4 will have 6.1-inch OLED display. Done. Sentence. Okay. where does my brain go when I read that? I think of like all of these hypotheticals. Okay, that means that it's going to be bigger. That means they're not recycling the Mini. That would make more sense than recycling the iPhone 11. How many cameras is that going to have? Which chip did they put in there? If it's that much bigger, what does the price mean? That's how my brain works. Is I see little details and I extrapolate on them. And that's what I think you guys like about my content. I don't know. I still feel weird saying it doesn't feel right to say that's why my content is good, because I still don't think it's that good. I still think it's got a fast food approach. My channel's very much more quantity than quality, and I don't shy away from that. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not trying to be quality. I'm trying to be quantity. But that's just how I've structured my YouTube channel to work around how my brain thinks and what I enjoy. I don't really enjoy fussing around with cameras and lenses and trying to get the right shot of a phone. I think Marquez enjoys that experience, and he's very creative in that sense. I'm not very creative in that sense. I don't feel a draw to that. I don't feel called to that. I don't feel like, wow, no, I'm so proud of that shot. No, I'm just like, yeah, I just have lots of thoughts and ideas, and I just want to be able to share them with other people that are as interested as I am in them. And that's why I'm very grateful for all of you for watching, because I don't really have people in my personal life that are as interested in these things as you guys are. So I just feel like that's why I do more live content like I am right now than most other tech YouTube channels, because I enjoy the real-time interaction. I want to hear from you, and I want to give you an idea and hear your thoughts on it, and we can have a back and forth. I like the real-time engagement. So I don't play your green skin intro. They're cringy, and I know a lot of people don't like them, but I'm doing them. I'm grateful that a lot of you guys like them, but I would probably still be doing them even if you didn't like them, because I feel like I would just get too bored if I didn't have some aspect of creativity to the video. I mean, there's a certain amount of creativity when you're just interpreting the news and leaks and rumors and stuff, but some of the news is so dry. It's like, okay, yeah, I can talk about that, but I need a way to make it fun for me and hopefully fun for you. And if it's not fun for you, I understand, and I got no problem with you disliking, unsubscribing, finding someone else that delivers the news to you in a more efficient manner. No problem with that. It's more for me than anything. But Dovena says, I had such beautiful, good patience today. Well, good. I don't know if you're a doctor or something, or you're just very patient, but thank you for your support, Dovena. I appreciate that. Let's see. I've been watching you since early iPhone days. No offense to MKBHD, but I prefer your video. Well, I appreciate that. I disagree, but that's very nice of you. Apple's PR team is irritating regardless of how many subscribers a YouTuber has. That's not, it's everybody's thoughts. We already made up our mind purchasing or not. Well, thank you. Oh, man. Chris Norton, super chat. Way too much. You guys are being far too generous. Thank you. He says, I think your YouTube channels are great. Well, thank you, Chris. That means a lot. I think they're okay. I'll admit that much at least. I just see so many more talented channels that put in so much more time and energy and effort than I do. So I can't. I just fundamentally, I appreciate you guys being so respectful and thoughtful, and I know you're probably just trying to make me feel good, but I got no problem admitting my content's not the greatest or the best. Like, I don't want you to feel like, oh no, you're okay. It's fine. I can accept that. It's actually better. There's actually less pressure in my work life if I know I'm not trying to be the best tech creator. I'm just trying to be one guy with an opinion, and hopefully my insight can be somewhat valuable and hopefully save you some money on a good buy. That's all I'm trying to be. I can live with that. I don't I don't need to be, I'm the best at this. I don't want to really be the best at anything. That's too much pressure. I'd rather just be content with where I am in life, and that's what I'm happy with. Flossie Carter is another good tech. Yes, absolutely. Breaks it down for people that don't know the tech jargon. I watch him and Marquez. Yeah, I don't watch that much tech content because I spend so much time making it. But from what I've seen of Flossie Carter, he seems very impressive and very talented. And absolutely, I would say, if only Flossie or me could exist on YouTube, I would take the L. I would let Flossie continue. I would retire for that. But my brain just doesn't work that way. I cannot accept like you're the best at this. No, I can't. I don't believe you. When you say that, I can't. It doesn't click in my head. It's like, no, you're just trying to make me feel good, which is nice of you. I appreciate the thought, but there's, okay, I better wrap up the stream here. Otherwise, too many people are going to keep donating, making me feel bad. Thank you, Robert, for the super sticker. It's a guy racing for some reason. Flossie is very honest, which I appreciate. Yeah. There was one kind of interesting question that I didn't want to. Oh, sorry. Another good, much better tech YouTuber, Mr. Who's the Boss. He makes very, very high quality content and discusses huge things. I agree. Sahir Galat, I hope I pronounced that correctly, says, what are the worst things about being a content creator and a tech YouTuber? That often doesn't get talked about very much. The first thing is your boss is always with you. So if you're your own boss, there's some advantages to that. There's some freedom with that. The disadvantage is it's very hard to separate work and personal life when you are your own boss. So if you don't have self-motivation, a lot of stuff won't get done ever. Which I've talked to some people that I've tried to encourage them, family members and stuff. I was like, that they tell me something they're interested in, and I'm like, yeah, you should do YouTube. You should, like, it's really fun. I like it. You should do it too. And they're like, oh, I just don't have the motivation. Like some people say, like, I need someone in charge to tell me what to do. Otherwise, I'll never do it. I need some kind of pressure. I need some kind of motivation. Like, we got to start at this time. I need you to be here at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They're like, I could never be so, like, self-motivating. I'm pretty good at being self-motivated, but the downside of that is it makes it very hard to turn off. Like even right now, a good example is I told my wife I would wrap up at 12:30 for lunch, and now I'm going past 12:30. So I'm having a hard time being like, oh, it's time to cut it off. Like let's wrap it up. So I'm trying to wrap up the stream here, but that's a good question, and I wanted to address it. So like oftentimes I struggle sleeping because my brain is constantly thinking about work. With my line of work, I'm perpetually scanning the news and also trying to think of things in my personal life. If there's no news, like what can I make a video about? There's a few video ideas I have right now, actually several, 2 or 3 that I'm like, I want to make these videos and they have nothing to do with the news, but what do I want to talk about in those videos? And then when there is news, okay, what do I want to talk about in that? And also I want to do a skit for that video. So what would a funny interaction be between 2 characters? What would Tim say? What would Craig say? So it's hard to shut off when you're like, okay, it's the end of the day. I'm tired. I need to go to bed. I just need to relax. But sometimes the boss in your brain is like, nope, keep going, keep thinking, keep coming up with stuff. And you're like, oh, I got to do that tomorrow. The other downside is the lack of activity that is not reimbursed. So there's not paid time off with YouTube. Like if you want to take a 2-week vacation, you can, but you're just not going to get paid for those 2 weeks. So it makes it kind of difficult to take time away. You just have to be more careful with your budget and your spending, which is what we've done so that I can take some time off. But still, it's a lot more stressful than a more traditional job where you can just say, okay, I'm on break. I'm on vacation now. You just take time away and you're done. And you can still get paid for that time that you're away, so that you have consistent income. And that's the really difficult thing about budgeting and YouTube and stuff is like, you are perpetually 4 weeks away from your best or worst paycheck, which has made planning our financial life very, very challenging because it's like, okay, how are you, like even the IRS when you're doing taxes is like, so what are you going to make next year? And I'm like, I don't know. It could be this much. It could be this much. And they're like, yeah, but you better get it right, and if you don't, we're going to penalize you for it, which has happened several years where I predict I'll make this much, and then I end up making this much, and then they're mad that I didn't pay enough taxes for it. So it's like, well, I didn't know how much I was going to make, so it's like 1 month I make this much, and it's just all over the place. So you're like, if you're taking out loans or you're buying a house, you're like, well, what's your typical income? I don't know. It could be great. It could go up. It could go down. It could stay the same. It's hard to know. So planning financially definitely adds a lot of stress. You're like, well, can we afford that? Well, we can now, but will YouTube always be here? Will the income always be the same? It's not a guarantee. Whereas with traditional jobs, you tend to get a bit more consistency with that. They're like, yeah, we will pay you this much, and we'll give you a raise at this time for this amount and all that. So yeah, it's. I'm screen recording. Please say. Okay. Emily Robbie said he will study for his trig midterm after the live stream ends. He swears, I'm sending this to my girlfriend. I probably said way too much, but thank you, Robert, for the super chat. I'm a nurse, Drew. Work was good today. Oh, good. Okay, gotcha. I'm very grateful to have a nurse watching. Nurses are super underappreciated, underpaid, and I think it's a very noble and honorable field for you to go into. So bless you for becoming a nurse. That's awesome. Let's see. Flossie is super honest. Okay. So I think that basically answers your questions. You guys have been way too generous today. Thank you for the donations. Seriously, it means a lot. And very special shout out to Tyler Forte, Riley McGinnis, and Bobby 4C, the 3 crazy people who signed up for Tailosive Tech Ultra. Really didn't need to do that. Probably shouldn't have do it, but I'm still grateful for those 3. Please cancel your memberships for the love of God. But thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.